Punctuation. Period. Periods signal that a sentence has come to a complete stop. Sentences that do not require a question mark or exclamation point should end with a period. A period is used to indicate a decimal. Example: a GPA of 3.9. A period separates dollars and cents. Example: the price of the loaf of bread is $2.89. A period follows an initial and a name. Example: is Robert W. Smith here today? A period indicates that a word is being used in abbreviated form. Example: Diva Apparel and Accessory Company Incorporated. Use a period to end a command. Example: take this book to Mrs. Grundy's office. Use a period to separate letters and abbreviations. Example: see Common Era. Question mark. Always place a question mark at the end of a direct question. Example: what kind of maintenance schedule should I follow? When a question includes a direct quote, the question mark of the overall sentence is placed outside, after, the end quotation mark. Example: did Mr. Keith say, the reading assignment is due on the last Friday of November? If a direct quotation is itself a question, the question mark is placed inside, before, the end quotation mark. Example: Mark asked, does anyone want more soda? Exclamation point. Place an exclamation point after a word, phrase, or sentence that requires extra emphasis or one that conveys an especially strong emotion. Example: that car is speeding out of control. Place an exclamation point after an interjection. Example: wow. Exclamation marks are placed inside quotation marks only when they are part of the direct quote. Example: Melissa screamed help when her bicycle's rain-soaked brakes unexpectedly failed. Quotation marks. When using a direct quote from an outside source, place double quotation marks around the speaker's words and use a comma or colon directly before the quote. Example: the local news anchor reported retailers are responding to lackluster consumer spending by slashing prices on apparel, electronics, and household goods. The titles of chapters, articles, poems, songs, and short stories require quotation marks. Example: the road not taken. The rules of American Standard English dictate that periods and commas are always placed inside, before, end quotation marks, whereas sentence structure determines placement of other punctuation, such as question marks and colons. Example: I like to listen to hip-hop classics by Tupac Shakur, Ice Cube, and Eminem, said Lisa. When punctuating dialogue, conversations between two or more speakers, enclose each speaker's words in quotation marks. Use single quotation marks when enclosing quoted material inside a direct quotation. Example: when John and I discussed the writings of Henry David Thoreau, he remarked, I especially appreciate Thoreau's sentiment, the bluebird carries the sky on his back. Semicolon. Use a semicolon to separate individual items or word groups in a series containing commas. Example: field trips are planned for Monday, May 5, Tuesday, May 6, and Wednesday, May 7. Use a semicolon before adverbial connectives such as however, nevertheless, and therefore joining together two independent clauses. Example: Cheryl tried out for cheerleading with her arm in a cast. Nevertheless, her routine dazzled the judges. Colon. Use a colon directly in front of a listing of a series of items. Example: while I was at the supermarket, I picked up the following: cheese, rolls, pie, and bottled water. A colon separates hours and minutes. Example. Let's meet for lunch at 1:30 p.m. A colon can be substituted for a comma before a direct quote. Example. Ms. Jones said, "Students who are missing more than 5 homework assignments will have points taken off their final grades." To separate biblical chapter and verse, a colon is used after the chapter, with the verse appearing directly after the colon. Example. Isaiah 61:3. A colon is placed at the end of the salutation line in a formal letter. Example. Dear Mr. Smith. A colon separates the city and publisher in a bibliographical citation or note. Example. New York. Alfred A. Knopf. Use a colon between titles and subtitles. Apostrophe. Use an apostrophe when letters have been deleted. Example. It is time for a change. An apostrophe is used with an S at the end of a word in order to indicate ownership. Example. On the day she was absent, Ms. Carson's homeroom class was very unruly. Only an apostrophe is added to a plural word ending with an S to indicate ownership. Example. The book's pages were scattered across the floor. Comma. Place a comma before a coordinating conjunction, and, or, but, nor, so, for, yet, joining two or more independent clauses. Example. I was going to go to the party, but I fell asleep while watching television. Place a comma between all of the items in a list. Example. She shopped for paper plates, napkins, cups, and plastic spoons. Place a comma directly after tags or phrases preceding direct quotations. Example. The author of the best-selling novel declared, "I can't wait to start working on my next book." Place a comma between dates, addresses, and titles. Example. Robert Smith, Ph.D., received his doctoral degree on May 14, 2007. Set off non-restrictive appositives in non-essential phrases and clauses by placing a comma on both sides. Do not use commas with restrictive appositives such as the poet Robert Frost. Example. Will's girlfriend, Hallie, whom he has dated for 2 years, doesn't know how to drive. Place a comma directly after conjunctive adverbs in transitional phrases, such as however, also, then, therefore, for instance, in conclusion, in fact, and for example. Example. In fact, the black shoes are handcrafted in Italy. Use a comma after an introductory adverbial clause or a prepositional phrase. Example. Under the decaying front porch, we discovered a box filled with books and old letters. Place a comma within, before, the end quotation mark of a direct quote preceding a tag, unless the quote ends with a question mark or an exclamation point. Example. I'm going on vacation next week, said Tanya. Hyphen. Use a hyphen whenever 2 or more words are joined together to serve as an adjective directly before a noun, unless the first word ends in lie. Example. The well-regarded teacher was honored for his exceptionally hard work and dedication. Use a hyphen when writing out fractions and compound numbers. Example. I spent 1/3 of my allowance on books and DVDs. Use a hyphen with compound nouns. Example. My sister-in-law works at the local mall. If a word is not listed in the dictionary as a compound word, for example, Notebook or self-esteem, write it as two separate words, for example, test taker. Parentheses. Place parentheses around letters or numbers that mark divisions in a series. Example, the main rules of the class are the following: 1. Don't speak when someone else is speaking. 2. Act respectfully toward your teacher and your classmates. And 3. Work hard and complete all of your assignments. Use parentheses to enclose supplementary material. Example, Dorothy, Mrs. Thomas Walker, an animal welfare activist, recently adopted an elderly mixed-breed dog from the local animal shelter. Ellipsis points. Ellipsis points signify that material has been omitted from the middle of a quotation, but they are normally not placed at the beginning or end of a quotation. Example, in his play Uncle Vanya, Anton Chekhov wrote, "Man has been endowed with reason, with the power to create. But up to now he hasn't been a creator, only a destroyer." Practice questions. Take a piece of paper and write down your answers. You'll have 10 seconds to answer each question. Press pause button if you need more time. Check your answers at the end of the video. Choose the punctuation mark that is needed in each of the following sentences. If no additional punctuation is needed, choose E. "It isn't fair," shouted Martin. "Coach Lewis never lets me start the game." Maureen's three sisters, Molly, Shannon, and Patricia, are all spending this summer at their grandmother's beach house. For the centerpieces, the florist recommended the following flowers: daisies, tulips, daffodils, and hyacinths. Lily is an accomplished gymnast. She won 3 medals in her last competition. Everyone was shocked when Max Smithfield, a studious, extremely bright high school senior, decided that college was not for him. Kim's assistant, usually so reliable, has been late for work 3 times this week, without any excuse. Before sending out invitations, Margot checked the party date with her mother-in-law. I remember, Louise recollected, the first time I was allowed to walk home from school by myself. Madeline Larkin, our office manager, is the most organized person I've ever known. I spend most of my time at the gym on the treadmill. Walking is my favorite form of exercise. Choose the alternative that shows the best punctuation for the underlined part of the sentence. If the sentence is correct as is, choose E. Simone bought 3 new pairs of shoes, even though she had put herself on a tight budget just last week. Most residents of the building have air conditioners. However, I've always found that a ceiling fan is sufficient. "Are you okay?" asked Timothy. "Are you sure you don't want to sit down and rest for a while?" The owners of the restaurant maintain that only organic ingredients are used in their kitchen. Before the student could be hired by the company, the student's advisor had to provide a letter of recommendation. The volunteers who would like to work the morning shift should sign their names on this sheet. The employees asked whether the company would be offering tuition reimbursement within the next 3 years. This is the new restaurant you've been talking about, isn't it? Turnips, a root vegetable, can be mashed, roasted, or used in casseroles. They met for the first time on August 27, 1972 in Seattle, Washington.